salute the Lord Krishna, world teacher, son of Vasudeva, destroyer of Kamsa, Chanura, supreme bliss of Devaki. Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhantu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. May He protect us both together, may He nourish us both. May we work conjointly with great energy, may our study be vigorous and effective. May we not mutually disagree with each other unnecessarily. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So it's conventionally, before we start, are there any questions? Yes?
So what was so special in Arjun that only he could see the cosmic vision and nobody else could?
That's a very good question. But now I suppose Sanjay also is seeing it. And I suppose Vyasa is also seeing it. So they're making a description of it. But maybe they're just seeing the description of it, just rather than actually seeing it directly. But in any event, whatever it is, it's God's grace in response to a request. Please let it happen. And so what was the speciality of Arjun? Well, so far we've been through 10 chapters already. So we'll see as we go on that he has understood. All his delusion has actually left him. And that means that he has purity of mind and a sincerity of purpose and a kind of direction, directed will now. And so, having seen the divine so far, he wants to see the sum totality. And so it's a mark of the love that Krishna has for Arjuna, that he grants him this. After all, of all the Pandavas, I am Arjuna. So this is the reason. But as I pointed out last week, we have to be careful what we ask for. So the divine gets unfolded, bit by bit, layer by layer, and then we realize ultimately that the sum totality doesn't necessarily meet with our naive expectations. We like to have a benign kind of blessing God, somebody that we look up to. But if we have a philosophy that says the entire universe is nothing more than a cosmic person, that everything, if we follow a law of nature that says that on the human level there's a body, there's a mind that seems to coordinate and interact, and that there are other bodies and minds, and that within that we find an intellect in the case of mankind, and within that we find an area of poise, of bliss, what yogis may describe as yoga nidra, and then within that we find the Atman, yogic language Purusha. We find that indwelling in the city that we have here, 11-gated city, as we mentioned many times before, belonging to that which is unflickering and unborn, unborn and unflickering. Consciousness is unflickering and pervading that whole thing. So if you can imagine that on an individual basis, it doesn't take much imagination to look around at the entire cosmos, particularly with our modern technology and equipment, and to see maybe then on the same principle, on the same basis, that what belongs to the microcosm is valid also for the macrocosm, that the whole of the universe is nothing more than the Lord's skin, the Lord's hands, the Lord's eyes, the Lord's heads, the Lord's limbs everywhere. You see how we use this expression, spiral galaxy. We have this expression, the arms of a galaxy. So I don't think it's any accident, because we relate it to an anthropomorphic situation. And we interpret it in this way. And so ancient seers and saints did it. And we mentioned last week, and read out actually, the Narayana Suktam, and there's the Purusha Suktam as well, which very succinctly tell us and paint a portrait of a universal person, a cosmic man, a cosmic entity. And if that's the case, then the whole physical universe is his body. And there is a cosmic mind that sits behind it, a cosmic intellect that sits behind it. And that is what we call personal God. And that there is a kinetic aspect to it that we call Ishvara, or God. And then we find there is a beyond, because everything that has a limitation infers a beyond. And this beyond we call Brahman. So on Sunday we went through a 24-item structure. 24, we expanded to 26 items, 26 elements, tattvas, categories if you will. And we see how in meditation, which you've just done, a guided meditation, that we can go from the broadest and grossest element that we have and trace its origins back gradually into more and more subtle areas until we find, there you are, Lord of the universe. And then, if we're fortunate, a kind of moment of a suspension where we feel being as it is, undiluted, infinite, invisible, that immortal Atman. And then if our attention wavers, to go back again and retrace our footsteps. This is this inward and outward going. Mental exercise is what we call the meditation practice. So we find this specialness in Arjuna, and so the Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, we begin this chapter and we find that Arjuna's supplication for this vision from 1 to 4 stanzas is given. And so it's not just granted, it's granted on the basis of our supplication. So it begins with the supplication, Arjuna Vacha, Madhunu Grahaya Paramam Guhyam Adhyatmana Samyitam Yat Tvayo Kritam Vachas Tena Mohayam Vikato Mama. Arjuna said, Arjuna Vacha, by this profound discourse, actually it starts with, you see, out of compassion towards me, you're granting this, Mad Anugrahaya. Concerning the self, which you have delivered out of compassion for me, my delusion has been dispelled over these last few chapters, but in particular the last chapter, chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga, where I have seen a glimpse of your outward manifestations. I have seen a portrait, an inference of this cosmic person in a familiar way, because you see the familiar life that I have, dependent on the eyes and the ears and so on. You've given me so many examples, even examples from the sea. I am the shark, and I am the superior. Wherever you see a superior of all beings, you know that to be me. Where you find the highest manifestations, then this gives you the evidence that I am there. And so we are all deluded. This is our problem. We're suffering from our delusion. But he says his delusion has been dispelled. And so we wonder, how is it dispelled? How did this deliverance come? And it comes from the infinitesimal portion of the entirety, that subject being raised. That was there in the last chapter. An infinitesimal fraction of my being, of my entirety, of my totality, this has resulted in the familiar world that we see. And that much has removed the delusion. Because our delusion is still there, because we do not see the relationship. We see the world as the eyes see it, as the mind interprets it, as the ears hear it, as the mind interprets it. Not as it is. And so when we laid out all these various categories and looked for a causal element, if we look within the universe itself, we'll only find a kind of transformational causation where one form gets transformed into another, and nothing is lost, nothing is gained, and nothing is lost. But the kind of causation from which all this comes is completely inscrutable. Modern science, when it looks closely at this world, is discovering one thing: the inscrutability of nature itself. Having come across the principles of the most fundamental world of physics, that is the quantum world, it is our surprise that beyond even 70 years from when a Copenhagen interpretation of the wave duality, wave-particle paradox, and when you do a survey, as was done with prominent scientists, you'll find nobody agrees. There's nobody who knows anything, actually, about quantum mechanics. We shouldn't be surprised, because the great physicist Richard Feynman said as much. If you think you've understood it, you have understood nothing, echoing similar statements from the Upanishads. Kena Upanishad tells us this in particular. If you think you know, then you don't know, actually. And if you don't know, then probably you know, and things like that. So we're living in an unknown area which has only really arisen in the last century. And now it still lingers as a problem in the 21st century. So what is Maya? Completely inscrutable. The ancient people knew this. Neither Sat nor Asat, neither existent nor non-existent. You can't say it's this, you can't say it's that. You can't say it's unreal. You can say it's impermanent. You can say it has a relative reality. But an absolute reality, absolutely not. So both Hinduism and Buddhism understand this point very much in terms of identifying this world as an ephemeral thing. But Vedanta puts this extra dimension. Don't just dismiss it as a nothing or as something of unimportance, something that has to be done away with. It is itself divine. Itself is full of this Shakti, this inscrutable Maya. This great, great Leela that is there, the opposite side of the coin to Nitya. And so, by this profound discourse so far, up to the 11th chapter, concerning the self, that's the whole of this chapter. So the whole of this Gita is only about the fundamental aspect of your own being, and as a result, the being of the entire universe. You want to examine what is the fundamental entity of the entire universe. Take this as a sample. You have to go no further and do an introspection on this. A relentless introspection will discover, what am I? And so you have delivered me, and how did you do it? Out of compassion for me. And so the Lord, being compassionate, when we turn to Him, as Arjuna did, compassion because seeing our suffering, because we are deluded, we suffer. We think we have a workable formula for dealing with day-to-day problems and issues, but we don't. And so the Lord has made it clear to Arjuna that all of this is just an infinitesimal fraction of his entirety. And that entirety has become manifested as this universe. And it's manifested as an unmanifest, unmanifest reality is immeasurable. You can't put a measure to it. You can't say where it begins. You can't understand where it ends. And based on this truth, Arjuna has revised his conception about what? He's revised his conception about, you see the diagram I always draw, that circle with A is here, human body, where we center ourselves as ego. And then on the other side, a small mark there that divides the sphere into two. On the other side, people, places, and events. The first one we typically call B for body, and then people, places, and events we call A, and then mind, because mind is associated with consciousness, we call C. So that's the kind of world that we have imprisoned ourselves, as it were, in. As it were, because we're not really in prison. Like an animal gets trapped into a trap, a bird gets trapped into a bird trap. It must have wandered, poor thing, into the thing. and it doesn't know, somehow gets confused how to get out. It can't see. It's a bit like squeezing yourself into an underground parking space. I remember I was in France once with one of our devotees here, and not being familiar with French, and a very tiny, tiny parking space with a hired car no less. And so we managed to maneuver this car successfully into a very tight parking space, and then looked around, and we failed to see the sign sortie. And so we assumed, being so small, the entrance was also the exit. And the parking place was configured in such a way that it was impossible. But we forced the issue, I think. And so the car seemed to be fairly pliable and forgiving. And there was a fine from the hire company afterwards, of course. But anyway, you see, so you know how to get in, but how to get out. And to make things worse, there were people who knew the system and were trying to come in, and we were trying to go out. And I think they were speaking French when they spoke these. So, we all have to revise. If we want to get out of this delusion, if we want to get out of this difficult, tight spot that we're in, then we have to make a revision, a reevaluation. We have to change our conceptions of how we view the world, and this is actually what has happened with Arjun. So what he's done is, he's revised his conception about himself and about the world. He doesn't see himself as an entity fighting a war that is unpleasant. He sees himself now as the divine Atman. And he sees himself also, he sees the world and its relationship, his relationship with the world has also changed, because he sees the world as also nothing more than fragmented divinity. And he also has a revision of his idea about what is his role in this, what is his duty, and realizes how this all began, of course. I have to do my duty. And so he's been delivered from delusion by a transformation in these three components. Now, more than that, Bhavapyayau hi bhutanam shrutau vishtarasho maya tataha kamala patraksha mahatmyam apicha vyayam. From you, beautiful expression he uses. What is the expression? Expression is lotus-eyed, Kamala Putraksha, lotus-eyed one. From you, I have been heard by me in detail of the origin and dissolution of beings, and also of your inexhaustible greatness. And that, of course, you, as Ishvara, as the Lord, is the source of the universe. And so on this ground, I'm not entangled anymore. The working of the universe derives its design and process from the Lord only. And that Lord suffers no changes, no mutations on this account. It's all His glory. This realization came to him. And so he goes on, evam etad yatat tvam atmanam parameshvara drashtam ichami te rupam aishwaram purushottama. As you have declared yourself to be, so it is, O Lord Supreme. Yet, it's not sufficient for me. What is more? I desire to see your Ishvara form. I've seen all your manifested forms, I've seen the universe, I've seen all your qualities, but I want to see something else. Purushottama. I want to see your cosmic form. So all these divine attributes are there in the Lord, in Ishvara. That brilliance cannot be separated from burning fire, for example. Just as divine excellences cannot be effaced from this supreme entity. And so there are some outstanding features that are described: knowledge, lordship, strength, potency, heroism, brilliance. In fact, actually, every quality you give the sun, you can give this Lord of the universe as well. It knows every corner. It's shining, it's beautiful, it radiates everywhere. It's a life giver. Without the sun, we are nowhere. So there are hidden glories which may be recognized only when he condescends to reveal himself to us. So Arjuna supplicates for a vision of his latent glories, the ones that have not been revealed to him. Let me see all your intimate glories now. Manyasi yadi taj chakyam maya drashtam iti prabhu yogeshwara tato metam darshaya tanam avyayam. If you, O Lord, think it possible for me to see it, I suppose there's nothing impossible for the Lord, is another way of saying, if you also desire, as I desire, then do, O Lord of Yoga, show me your eternal self. So not only does yoga emanate from Ishvara, yoga itself, but is also all powers emanate from him. He's also the bestower of it on worthy aspirants. So it reminds me also of the story there of Krishna himself. We find that Yashoda is given some reports from Krishna's playmates and brother nonetheless. The complaint is, small Krishna, we've seen him taking earth like clay and putting it into his mouth. I'm sure you've seen small children do that also. For some unknown reason, pregnant women also have this fancy, some kind of craving for iron and so on. But children want to explore with the mouth. And so she confronts Krishna with this. Did you? And his mouth is closed in a playful way, and he opens his mouth to show what is inside. And what she sees is something like this cosmic vision. She sees universes everywhere. In a flash she sees the whole universe before her, in his mouth. Probably rubs her eyes and so on, and understands there's much more to this Krishna. So in this way she also gets a divine vision. So we can't say that Arjuna exclusively ever got this. But in such great detail, as far as we know, he's the only one. So show me your eternal self. And the Lord's response then comes. Will he agree? Will he not? And how will it work? We are humans and we're only registering the external world. Our eyes are only designed to catch all the superficial of the superficial, the fragmentation of the fragmentation. A fragment of myself comes out as this. We can see it's like the crest of a crest of a crest of a wave, and that's all we're seeing. And we're only interpreting it because we only have 5 photographs of the universe. Eyes, ears, and so on. Only 5 senses are there. Very, very limited. And so our interpretation is only along these restricted lines. So some special vision is required. A divine eye has to be opened. Ajna has to be opened. An internal yogic eye of discernment and revelation has to be opened. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Pasyame Partha Rupani Shatashota Sahasrashaha Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Varna Kritini Cha. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha said, behold, Pasya, behold me, O Partha. Behold all my many forms, by hundreds and thousands, manifold and divine, and of multi-colors and shapes. We're not making a numerical valuation here. We're not adding up all the worlds here. It's simply, when you ask a cosmologist, can you tell me how many are the stars and so on and so forth, you can see how the numbers are rounded off. You can see how mentions of 100 billion, and you say 100 billion stars in this Milky Way, and then how many Milky Ways, how many galaxies are there? I mean, 200 billion. And is that the end of it? No, it's just our limitation. We can't see anything beyond the speed of light. 186,000 miles per second is our speed limit. We don't know how far it extends. Infinitely it extends. We only know what we know according to our limitations. And the limitations are instrumentations. So we round figures off. It's only an approximate thing. It's a basic head count of all the mass in the universe. That is all the light that we can catch in the universe. And we can relate it there to a kind of a weighing. We can put it on a kind of scale and estimate, because mass and light have a relationship. And also motion has a relationship. When we take these three factors, we can pretty much weigh the observable universe. But beyond that, we have no idea. So, by hundreds and thousands is the expression. Sahasrashaha. And manifold and divine and multicolors. Beyond even the range of our visible spectrum, no doubt. And things and beings seemingly extraneous to Ashvara are not so in fact. So nothing exists outside the pale of the Lord. Offshoots as they are of His immensity, the divine element is in one and all of them. It's going to be revealed shortly, of course, that the diversities in form, in color, nature and existence are all really the manifestations of just this one cosmic entity who is, one without a second is the expression. Now, by asking Arjuna to behold his macrocosmic form, the Lord recognizes his worthiness for that holy communion. And there's the answer to your question. Sri Ramakrishna says this, it is Narayana who has become the all. Man is Narayana, see, related to the term Nara, man. All creatures are Narayana. The Rishi is Narayana. The wicked man is Narayana. Whatever is Narayana. Narayana sports in multi-forms, displaying his glory in all these forms. Don't ask me, is it possible to see God in the most heinous criminal? Yes, not only in, but through, as, and beyond. We have to learn the art of revaluing everything in this way. And so, Pasyadityan Vasun Rudran Ashvina Marutastata Bahunya Drastapurvani Pasya Skaryani Bharata. Pasya, behold. What? The Adityas, we've already come across these Adityas. We've come across Vasus, we've come across Rudras. And Ashwins is a peculiar thing. Why mention just Ashwins? Because the whole universe we know is in a symmetrical form. Whatever is on the one side is balanced on the other side. Where there's an electron, there's a positron. Where there's a proton, there's an electron. Where there's a plus, there's a minus. Where there's a male, there's a female. Where there's good, there's bad. Where there's virtue, there's vice. And we can't judge on the basis of virtue and vice. We have to see a wider picture than this, beyond the small scope of our independent sphere that we've created. And so we can say Adityas, 12 Adityas, representing, if we like, time. Vasus, those that are dwelling in first space. We can say everything that occupies space and everything that comes out as its twin, time. Time and space in one science are the obverse and reverse of the same thing, so that we have only one term for it, time-space continuum. This is Einstein. And so we have these ashwins and maruts, the things that make things move, like the wind. And behold, many marvels never seen before. See? Vani, Pasha, never seen before. These great Asharyani, wonders. See, the manifest aspect of Ishvara is finite compared with his unmanifest infinitude. We have no idea. It boggles the mind. We have some inference when we look out and find out what's going on in telescopes. But they were only able to see partial snapshots. It has to be funneled through the range of our senses again. And it requires this inner opening for us to see these things. All of us require this inner opening. And the yogic language has this very pictorial language of these various chakras, these various levels of consciousness, unfolding and opening one by one. until we find this inner eye of intuition opening, where at each level more and more gets revealed, until the whole thing gets revealed. They're like a small patch of sunlight on your floor, coming through and being filtered by a small hole in your roof, and in widening the hole, you find more of the light on the floor, until ultimately you take the whole roof off, and the whole glory is manifest before your own very eyes. So these are sufficient data to make man, all of us, stand aghast at the structure of the universe, which is ever available for observation, if not through a telescope, through internal yogic insight. You see, if we say that the Vedas are all true, and all revealed to rishis, we have to take the Vedas in their entirety, not just the philosophical portions, the insights, the jnana kanda, but also the other sides to do with physics and cosmology and so on. There's an argument like that. And so it's no surprise to us that we find all these discoveries, modern discoveries, just echoing the ancient discoveries of the past. Ihaikastam jagat kristam pasyadya sachacharam mama dehe kudakesha yachcha nyat drastam ichasi. Behold here today, O good Kesha, the whole universe of the moving and the unmoving, and whatever else you desire to see, all integral of my body. The whole thing is only one entity, my body. How many universes are there? You can't say multiverse, because universe means only one thing. There's a universe. And that universe is that one body. And there may be many bodies within that body, as so to speak, just as at the cellular level we find many, many cells, all coordinating within one body. Supposing you're within one small cell. There's a film like that, I think, isn't there? Some kind of film where an elephant, I think, discovers. You have children, you probably know. It's one of these ones from that Cat in the Hat person. Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, the elephant discovers, hears something in his ear, I think it is, and discovers that there's a whole small world. Oh no, I know what it is. On a small flower, small dandelion or something like that. And he's hearing these small voices from here, and he's trying to convince everybody, there's a whole world here. You have no idea. Nobody believes him. And so he's carrying this precious cargo of this flower, knowing that there's a whole world. And of course the people in this world, every time he moves, get rocked back and forth. Their whole universe erupts like a volcano. And they think he's God.
He is.
And his name is Horton, I think is the... Yeah, Horton, yeah. So it's very well worth watching, because it illustrates this point in a very humorous way, and tells us, you know what, if we were bacteria, then we would have a very different view of things. And animals have a very different view of things, and humans have a very different view of things, and devas have a very different view of things, and different entities on different stratas have different views of things. Now the advantage that man has is, man has the flexibility and wisdom and internal capacity to shift his or her position to any one of these areas and glide across the border very easily. We can stand where God stands, if we choose. I once said to a retreat, and the people running the retreat recorded that and replayed it the next year. So I said, you're thinking of things and viewing things from your point of view. But what about from God's point of view, on God's throne? From Arjun's point of view, it's all in great detail. You see, explained to him in all great detail. But from the Lord's point of view, it's not like that at all. See? From Arjun's point of view, it's vast and huge. But from the Lord's point of view, it's business as usual and conventional, and things are running smoothly. So he says, behold here today, Gurikesh, the whole universe of the moving and the unmoving. There are things that we think are not moving, but they're moving. For example, right now we're moving at incredibly fast rates. We have to, if we want to total it all up, we have to take into account that the Earth itself is spinning, and that the solar system itself is spinning, and that the Milky Way galaxy itself is spinning. So there's an enormous amount of movement that we're completely unaware of. A little bit like being in a train, and it's there at a station, and you think you're moving, but it's the other train that's moving. Or you're in a car wash, and you think you're moving forward, but in fact the wash is moving backward. It's an optical illusion. Or a child that says, oh, how fast the moon is moving. And in fact, it's the clouds that are moving, and the sun is, and the moon is not. So we superimpose movement where movement is not, and vice versa. But there are some things that do not seem to move. Rocks don't seem to move. But now if we look out in the vast universe, we'll find the moving and the unmoving. And from our point of view, what's unmoving? When you get up close, you'll find it's moving. The Hubble telescope took this deep field picture where there was a blank space, I think I mentioned before, and nothing seemed to exist. And over a period of time, some snapshots showed points of light gathering, gathering, to indicate hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of other galaxies in a small square inch of space that was random and pretty mundane. So the whole universe of the moving and the unmoving, and whatever else you desire to see, all integral of my body, that's the point. Now we do this, we'll make this probably the last one. Natu mam shakshase drashtam anena va swa chakshusha divyam dadami te chakshu pasyame yogam aishwaram. But you cannot see me with these eyes of yours. I give you divine sight. Of course, divine sight, we assume, was there in the beginning. Now it's stated. I give you divine sight. Behold my supreme yoga, my supreme unveiling, if you will. And so in the scheme of the evolution of life, one species, we find, evolves into another until perfection in the body and mind is reached in the human. But nothing in nature can be found parallel to this human tabernacle or this human equipment, so that even if we assume so-called reincarnation or transmigration, whichever term you prefer, and go and get your reward, and even govern a section of the universe, if you want your freedom, in the normal course of events, unless you go to a realm called Brahmaloka, close to the divine, where nearness soon becomes oneness, you will be reborn, because this is the only suitable equipment to make this investigation and get this understanding and this revelation. And so, there's nothing in nature which equates to this human, complex, sacred housing. The human brain, the human mind, man is a repository of knowledge. He has added marvelously and continues to add to this knowledge of things in nature. He is correspondingly gaining mastery over everything in it to a very large extent. But that has also caused, mastery is one thing, but understanding it, of course, is another. And human contrived aids to sense knowledge, such as the telescope, the microscope, X-ray, stethoscope, all of these, of course, are marvelous. And the telescopic capacity that we have now is second to none. It is so accurate and fine, screening out all the essential interferences that other telescopes had. But the seeming mastery of a nature has not been minimized, has not minimized our proneness to misery. It hasn't solved that problem. And it has in a way, it's aggravated it. Technology has given us more headaches, probably. And his enormously increased intellectual knowledge has not solved the problems of, the basic problems about life and death, about mortality and immortality. And it gives us a question mark every time a mortal event occurs, where we find a death occurs in our own family or with our friends. And as you head toward the final exit, you'll find more and more have left the exits before you without any clue about what's on the other side for you. So yoga steps in here. And yoga steps in here to make human life a fulfillment. Through the practice of this yoga, a super sense called the divine eye can be developed, a kind of third eye. This is not a commercial eye. When I say commercial eye, I remember in the 1960s, there was a man who wrote a whole series of books. I think his name was Lobsang Rampa. And in there he tells of life with the lamas and so on. And he tells about opening up the third eye. It became very popular reading. It tells the readers how he sat in a monastery and took a sharp object and started chiseling the forehead. And of course, this is nothing to do with what we're talking about at all. Pure science fiction. And it turned out he was a Canadian bus driver and had never been to Tibet in his whole life. Nevertheless, it was very interesting reading and convinced people. And actually, on the positive side, gave people a kind of interest in the esoteric somehow, or in Eastern philosophy and so on. But there's an enormous amount of superstitious and misinformation about this so-called third eye. You know, you see, if somebody looks at you very closely and I can't see your third eye yet. You have some development to go. So it's neither a freak nor an accident. With precision and certainty, the spiritual eye can be evolved. That's it. This is what it means. We have two eyes, no doubt, but the inner eye of intuition gets opened. The introspective eye, the revealing eye that tells us about the internal world. And so this has to be opened up for us. Man completes his evolution with the acquisition of this divine insight. We can put it in the yogic language again, of this Ajna Chakra opening up for us as a culmination of this coiled potential, opening up different levels of consciousness, step by step, until finally this awakening comes of this Ajna. So after getting established in spiritual excellence, the sadhaka or spiritual practitioner is required to subordinate his personal will to the cosmic will, there's the key, which is termed as the grace of the Lord, as we say in theological language. What is the grace of the Lord? This question was asked again on the weekend. What is it? Well, it comes to us easily and naturally when there's an alignment. Sri Ramakrishna tells us about setting the sail. The wind of God's grace is always blowing. We have but to set our sail. Another way of saying, we have to align our personal will with the divine will, or the cosmic will. We find it there in the Christian Lord's Prayer. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. On earth, this physical realm, as it is in this inner realm of divinity. These two things have to align themselves. And when these conditions are fulfilled, of course, then realization of God becomes possible. So God reveals himself variously in the various planes of consciousness, as we said. And at the mental plane, he is cognized as the phenomenon. At the ethical level, as the infallible law. At the bhava samadhi level, or the divine eye level, as the immanent or the kinetic aspect of the Ishvara. And eventually, Sahasra, at the Nirvikalpa Samadhi level, symbolized in yogic language as the 1,000-petal lotus. This is the intuition that is freed of the mind itself as a transcendent reality, or the static aspect, if you will, of Ishvara. And finally, the individual merges into the absolute. which is Brahman. God realization takes place in this systematic order, is a technical ordering of exactly how it happens. There's no mystery about it. So Arjuna is blessed with a vision of the immanent Ishvara, and this realization relieves him of all his problems at the moment. I put that caution in. All his problems, personal and public. All your problems are relieved when this inner opening occurs. The solution is not from the outside, from the external. So he gets enlightened so as to discharge what? To come and play his part again on the stage of life, discharging his duty, not retreating from it, not entering into some kind of sublime realm. That's already there with him. And so to be a willing instrument at the hands of the Lord. Remember how Narendra Swamiji had asked his master Ramakrishna, please won't you give me this great samadhi and so on. Oh, was the disappointed outcry from his master. I thought better of you. I thought you'd be like a huge banyan tree giving shelter to all and sundry, that kind of understanding. So when we talk of the ultimate freedom, it's not the freedom of withdrawing and not playing. It's a bit like playing a musical instrument that you've never played before. First of all, you become fearful of it, or fearful of your own ability. You become doubtful. Can I do this? Can I not? Can I play it? Can I not? And then, with persistence, you start playing simple tunes. And then confidence in yourself grows. This is called faith. Faith grows. So fear, 1F, gets shifted away by faith. Faith in yourself and your capacity and your ability. And then ultimately, through practice, the faith increases until you become proficient in the instrument. And with eyes closed, you can pick and choose any tune that you want to play, or not play. What is the freedom? To play or not to play. But freedom isn't found in sticking to one note called samadhi that becomes or makes you a public nuisance. So why don't you have the freedom to play this instrument up and down as you choose, in any variation you want, not stick onto this one note. That's the point. This is true freedom. So, sage Vyasa is all perfection. Then also, as part of the answer to your question, he intuits Ishvara as well, in all of his aspects. And by the grace of this sage, Vyasa, Sanjay, who's relating this story, is favored with the same cosmic vision which Arjuna gets, and he faithfully reports it to his blind monarch, Dhritarashtra. So it looks like the three of them get this vision. Sri Ramakrishna has this to say, and then we finish off. The great ones compare bhakti with the magic collyrium applied to the eye. Srimati Radha once told her companion maids that she saw Shri Krishna only wherever she turned her eyes. That's all that was necessary. Her eyes were painted with Krishna, as it were, and therefore wherever she saw Krishna. Krishna here, Krishna there, Krishna everywhere. You have anointed your eyes with the divine collyrium of bhakti. Therefore you behold your darling Krishna in this way, answered the companions. The next week we pick up the subject, Ishvara's cosmic form, and so we'll continue the chapter, Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace beyond the all.